Hey, this is Blondeguygamer and welcome to another Kickback review. This time we have a rather peculiar game, Armikrog, which just so happens to be a spiritual successor to one of my favorite point-and-click adventures, the Neverhood. A game that, while not a commercial success, has a cult following for its unique stop-motion animation, surreal clay sculpted world, quirky music, and offbeat humor made by Earthworm Jim creator Doug Schnapel and his Neverhood team back in 1996. I've already gushed about that game and talked about its sequel, Skull Monkeys, in a video, but after Boombots, the studio disbanded and fell into obscurity. That is, until Doug Schnapel and many of the original Neverhood developers formed Pencil Test Studios and launched a successful Kickstarter for Armikrog in 2013. 2 years of development later, Armikrog released on September 30th on PC, Linux, and Mac via Steam and Good Old Games, with Wii U and PS4 versions coming sometime in the future with dates yet to be announced. So as a Neverhood fan, what did I think of Armikrog? Well, it has its issues, but I still liked it overall. Starting off the game, an opening cutscene with our rocky intro song explains that the inhabitants of planet Ixen are facing extinction unless they acquire plutonium, their power source, from distant planet Spiral 5. 3 astronaut brothers are sent to the task, but with 2 of them down for the count, it's up to the youngest brother Tommyknot and his faithful canine-like sidekick Beak to save Ixen, who then proceed to crash land their ship on Spiral 5 and enter a mysterious building to begin our point-and-click adventure. As such, you'll be primarily solving area puzzles to progress, such as pushing these square creatures or picking up items, which Tommyknot conveniently stores in his chest cavity much like Clayman, and automatically uses the correct associated item when prompted to. You can also switch between Tommy and Beak, the latter of whom you'll need to press certain switches or go to areas only he can access to gather items, which traveling through by himself is pretty trippy looking since he sees things differently, and his method of giving items he finds to Tommyknot is a little gross. Besides the streamlined item management, there are a number of other abstract puzzles to solve, some of which require you to pay mind to visual clues for solutions, so it definitely harkens back to the days of writing down notes on paper for adventure games. Or you could just take phone or screenshots if you don't want to be that old school. As such, these puzzles are just about as weird and obtuse as the Neverhoods. There were times I did get stuck for a bit, primarily with not finding or clicking on specific things, much like playing any conventional point-and-click adventure game for the first time, but I did eventually figure out everything on my own, and you can always click on these statues for some hints, albeit somewhat cryptic. Though some puzzles are easier to figure out than others, and a couple are heavily trial and error based, in particular the music based one in which you have to hand correct toy pieces to complete a song, and not only that, but this and another type of puzzle are recurring, which while they do get more challenging, does seem a little recycled. However, I'd still prefer repeating puzzles a few times over something like the image matching puzzle in the Neverhood. That one was just a pain in the ass. Also, I would totally be down with plushies or figurines of these things, just saying. If there is anything that Armikrog nailed, it's the visuals. The handcrafted set pieces and stop motion animation are awe-inspiring, and I'm really glad to see this style presented in modern-day high definition. The surreal, almost alien imagery definitely makes it apparent that this was made by the same people from the Neverhood. I'd even go as far as say that this wouldn't be out of place in the Neverhood universe. So any similarities are of course intentional, not to mention the absurd humor too. Hell, there's even a wall of text as a throwback to the Hall of Records, and thankfully condensed in one screen and not 30. It's still a pretty long-winded read, but it's easier to go through than the Hall of Records, and it provides some interesting backstory for the game. I also can't forget the music, as Neverhood composer Terry Scott Taylor returns for Armikrog, and it's superb, fitting right in with the game's world and being catchy to boot. I like the soundtrack enough to actually buy it. Only problem is that sometimes the music doesn't play and we just get ambience, which may be intentional but seems inconsistent. When the music does kick in, it's still a treat. As for the rest of the sound design, it holds up reasonably well. Mike J. Nelson as Tommyknot and Rob Paulson as Beak do an admirable job with their roles, but there isn't as much talking as you would think. Besides the cutscenes, the duo only say a quick remark when entering a new room, and they are pretty quiet otherwise and don't give much feedback on current situations. Still, I like these two as characters, and the story that slowly unfolds as you go through is fine, albeit a little anticlimactic at the end. And now for what you may already be familiar with if you played the game when it launched. The bugs. Granted, I never had any that completely broke the game, and most were minor, such as specific voices and subtitles not playing or desyncing respectively. The only one that really annoyed me was Beak not wanting to step on a switch occasionally unless I left and re-entered the room. The most glaring problem I did find during my first playthrough was being able to walk right through a door without solving its puzzle to open it. It is a little disheartening when Armikrog was delayed a couple of times, only to still have a few bugs here and there. However, Pencil Test has been working on fixing bugs with patches, a couple of which were implemented during my second playthrough for recording, and I wasn't able to go through that door into the next area this time around, although I was still able to step into the doorway, but at least it was fixed, sort of. And they even added some things like a custom cursor that reverted to the default mouse cursor in the bottom area of the screen for me. And most of the minor bugs I encountered before were still there in the second playthrough. Yeah, hopefully the rest of these will get fixed soon, because otherwise I think the game is fine, it just needs a more thorough ironing. Besides, games these days being released with bugs, whether it's indie or AAA, is pretty much standard nowadays, unfortunately. And really, besides the few technical issues, I still enjoyed Armikrog and was glad to have backed it. The only other flaw I can see is that it's a short game for the price it's offering, which honestly didn't bother me much because I was expecting it to be that long because the Neverhood is just about as short of a game too. Although you could argue that Armikrog is not as condensed as the Neverhood, but there's still some creative visuals and details worth seeing. And in this day and age, I'm just glad we got another game like the Neverhood because these are truly unique games worthy for the video game as art debate. If you like the Neverhood, or at least find this interesting in any capacity, I'd check out Armikrog. Try not to have the mixed reception and $25 price discourage you, but I won't blame you if you wait to get it on sale. I do want this resurgence of the Neverhood style to do well, then who knows, maybe Pencil Test Studios will make more Armikrog games, like a challenging side-scrolling platformer with timing on Beak Beak. I'm probably the only one that would actually want that, aren't I?